Okay, so you're not going to believe the story that just broke. There's this guy in Maryland pleaded guilty to wire fraud.
Okay, sounds pretty run-of-the-mill so far.
Right, that's what I thought. But then, here's the kicker. The feds are saying this whole thing was actually linked to funding North Korea's nuclear program.
Wow. Okay, that's a major escalation from standard wire fraud, North Korea.
Exactly. And it gets even wilder. Apparently, he somehow got access into sensitive U.S. government systems. We're talking FAA systems, among others.
The FAA. How on earth? That's a critical infrastructure. How did they even get to him?
Get this. Online gaming. That was the recruitment vector.
Online game? You're kidding. So, like, infiltrated through a game to fund a nuclear program and breach government networks.
Seems like it. Straight out of some kind of techno thriller, right?
It really is. And it just highlights these bizarre intersections in modern security threats. You've got finance crime, state-sponsored programs, cyber breaches, all tangled up.
Yeah, and the gaming part. It shows how creative, I guess, these networks are getting, finding new ways in.
Definitely a novel approach for recruitment and, well, exploitation. It paints a worrying picture.
Absolutely. And, staying on that theme of foreign influence and sort of covert actions, there was another case just decided in New York.
Oh, yeah? What was that one?
A former NYPD officer, he just got sentenced. Turns out he was basically working for China.
Working for China.
Helping them stalk a dissident, someone living right here in the U.S. It's all connected to that Operation Fox Hunt initiative from Beijing.
Fox Hunt.
Right.
That's supposedly their anti-corruption drive, but it's faced a lot of criticism.
Well, yeah. The officer claimed he was misled, thought it was legitimate work, but the charges were serious.
It really shows how far states will go, doesn't it? Projecting power right across borders. And Fox Hunt operations have definitely been accused of, let's say, ignoring sovereignty and legal norms elsewhere.
For sure. And the dissident story is interesting, too. Former Chinese official accused of bribery back home.
Which he denies, right? I think I remember reading his wife said he challenged the power structure there.
Exactly. So a potential motive for targeting him. And the methods used. Reportedly, they left a threatening note, even flew his father over from China to pressure him.
Classic pressure tactics.
Yeah.
It's really quite chilling when you think about it happening on U.S. soil.
It really is. Okay, so let's shift a bit. Southeast Asia. Things are tense there, as usual.
Particularly between the Philippines and China, I assume. South China Sea.
You got it. Now the Philippines is accusing China of arresting some Filipino citizens, claiming they're spies.
Interesting timing. Didn't Manila just recently crack down on what they called Chinese spy networks?
They did. So this feels very much like, retaliation, right. It's all happening against the backdrop of the South China Sea disputes, obviously.
Tit-for-tat accusations. It's a common playbook in these situations, unfortunately, using espionage claims as diplomatic leverage.
And the detail here. The Filipinos arrested. Apparently, they were government scholarship recipients studying in China. Manila is flat out denying they were spies.
Scholarship recipients. Yeah, that detail definitely fuels the suspicion that this is politically motivated retaliation from Beijing's side.
Yeah.
It just adds more friction to an already tense relationship.
No kidding. And still on the Philippines, a slightly different angle, Google Maps.
Google Maps, what about it?
They've apparently started labeling the waters west of the Philippines using Manila's preferred term, the West Philippine Sea.
Oh, interesting. That's the term the Philippines uses, but obviously China contests it heavily.
Right. And normally you might think, okay, map label, big deal. But given Google's past, accusations of sometimes censoring things to appease China, this could be seen as a subtle but maybe significant nod to the Philippine position.
That's a good point. Tech platforms labeling contested areas is always sensitive, adopting the local official terminology like West Philippine Sea. Yeah, that could be interpreted as taking a side or at least reflecting the view of the coastal state more directly, especially with the scrutiny these companies are under.
Okay, so let's bring it back home to the U.S. There's a situation brewing involving Harvard University.
Harvard, what's going on there?
Potential U.S. sanctions violations. It involves hosting and providing training to a Chinese organization.
Which organization?
The Xinjiang Production and Construction Corps,
Huh?
the XPCC.
The XPCC, wow. Okay, that's serious. They're heavily implicated in the human rights abuses in Xinjiang.
Exactly. So this story goes back to 2014. Big donation to Harvard from a Hong Kong family. This led to setting up something called the Harvard-China Health Partnership, HCHP.
Okay, a health partnership.
Right. But here's the core issue. This HCHP reportedly provided training, like executive education, to members of the XPCC. And not just once. In 2019, and again just last year, in 2023.
Training the XTCC. Given what the XPCC is, that raises immediate red flags. It's not just some company, is it?
Not at all. Can you maybe elaborate on what the XPCC actually is? It's kind of unique.
Yeah, it's this huge state-run entity in Xinjiang. It's paramilitary, it's a corporate conglomerate. It runs prisons, media, farms, schools. It's essentially a parallel government structure out there.
A parallel government.
Pretty much. And it's been identified as a key instrument in the state's campaign against the Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities. Suppression of culture, identity, forced labor, internment camps, land expropriation, heavy policing, social engineering. The list is long and deeply disturbing.
And that's the group Harvard's partnership trained. Now, the timeline is absolutely crucial here.
Let me guess. Sanctions.
Bingo. The U.S. government slapped sanctions on the XPCC in 2020 for exactly those human rights abuses.
Okay, so wait. 2020, the first training was 2019.
Before sanctions.
But the second one was 2023.
After sanctions were imposed, which is why Harvard is now facing accusations of potentially violating U.S. sanctions law.
Right. That makes sense. Engaging with a sanctioned entity, especially providing services like training, that's a clear potential violation.
Yeah.
It really speaks to the need for serious due diligence at universities when dealing with foreign entities and funding.
Especially now, right? There's so much more scrutiny on foreign money flowing into U.S. universities.
Absolutely. And continuing that engagement after the U.S. government explicitly sanctioned the organization for human rights abuses. That's what puts Harvard in a very difficult position here.
Definitely one to watch. Okay, let's broaden the scope again. Global tensions, different arenas. The Red Sea.
The Houthi attacks on shipping.
Yeah.
Still ongoing, causing major disruption.
Yep. And now the U.S. is pointing fingers at a specific Chinese company, Changguang Satellite Technology.
What are they accused of?
Providing satellite imagery or intelligence that allegedly helped the Houthis target ships.
Helping the Houthis. That's interesting, given China's usual stance on, freedom of navigation and trade.
Right. The Houthis say their attacks are about solidarity with Gaza. The U.S. military has been responding, but the U.S. is essentially saying China, or at least this Chinese company, is enabling these attacks.
And it wasn't that same company, Changguang, already sanctioned by the U.S. for something else?
It was, for supporting the Wagner Group, the Russian mercenary group, in Ukraine.
So a pattern, potentially. Supporting destabilizing actors against U.S. interests or allies, despite sanctions. That really undermines China's claims to be a neutral party working for peace, doesn't it?
That's exactly what the State Department implied, called them empty claims. And China denies it, of course, says they're working to stabilize things.
But there were reports they rejected U.S. requests to, lean on Iran or stop this kind of support.
Precisely. It's complex, given China's trade focus relies on safe shipping lanes like the Red Sea, but also their relationship with Iran, who backs the Houthis.
A very tangled web of interests there.
Definitely. Okay, shifting closer to China again. Taiwan. There's been a bit of a stir about Taiwanese military members found holding Chinese residency permits.
Mainland Chinese residency permits for active Taiwanese military personnel.
That's the report. These permits basically grant the right to live and work on the mainland.
Wow. Okay, that's a huge security concern for Taipei. Instantly raises questions about loyalty, potential espionage.
You bet. Especially with Beijing ramping up influence operations against Taiwan constantly. Taiwan's defense minister has apparently reacted quickly, banning anyone holding these permits from accessing sensitive military information.
A necessary first step, I'd imagine. It just highlights another, maybe more subtle vector for Beijing's influence, besides the usual military drills and cyber stuff, getting inside the wire, so to speak.
Yeah, potentially quite insidious. Now, let's talk Vietnam. It seems Xi Jinping's efforts to court Vietnam might be hitting a snag, especially in the context of the trade war.
How so? What's happening with Vietnam?
There are reports, unconfirmed, mind you, but still significant, about a potential massive arms deal between Vietnam and the U.S.
Oh, really? What kind of arms?
F-16 fighter jets. If it goes through, it'd be the biggest U.S.-Vietnam arms deal ever.
F-16s for Vietnam? That would be a major development. A big signal, considering Vietnam's historical ties and also their ongoing tensions with China.
Especially over the South China Sea, right? That's the constant friction point.
Exactly. Getting advanced U.S. jets like F-16s would be a significant upgrade for them, and clearly a move to bolster their position relative to China. It signals a deepening security relationship with Washington.
And it comes at a time when maybe they're looking beyond their traditional supplier, Russia, given, well, everything going on.
That's certainly plausible. Questions about Russian equipment quality and availability might be pushing Hanoi to diversify. And, dangling a big arms deal could also be linked to trade talks with the U.S., perhaps giving Vietnam some extra leverage.
Interesting angle. And it seems Vietnam is also getting tougher on the economic front, specifically regarding China and tariffs.
What are they doing there?
They've reportedly started cracking down, much like South Korea, on Chinese goods being shipped through Vietnam, relabeled Made in Vietnam, just to dodge U.S. tariffs.
Ah, the transshipment issue. Yeah, the U.S. has been complaining about that for a while. People like Peter Navarro were quite vocal about it.
Right. So Vietnam taking action is notable, and apparently they're not just cracking down on Chinese goods going to the U.S., but also on U.S. goods being fraudulently sent through Vietnam to China.
So a broader crackdown on trade fraud,
Yeah.
regardless of origin or destination.
Seems like it. Maybe trying to clean up their image as a reliable trade partner overall.
Could be. Or at least demonstrate they're taking U.S. and international concerns about circumvention seriously. It's a smart move if they want to maintain good trade relations globally.
Okay, and for the last item.
Oh.
This one is, frankly, a bit alarming, and maybe slightly sarcastic in its reporting.
Uh-oh, what now?
Reports are circulating that China has stated, get this, they will stop supervising veterinary drugs and medical devices that are being exported.
Stop supervising quality, as in no oversight for exports.
That's the claim, and it's being framed as a direct response to the U.S. trade war.
Wait, seriously, given the history, the concerns that have existed for years about the safety of some Chinese products, removing oversight on vet drugs and medical devices, that sounds incredibly risky.
Risky is putting it mildly. It sounds potentially dangerous, frankly, like using public health and safety as a weapon in a trade dispute.
If true, that's a deeply concerning development. It plays right into existing anxieties and could have serious real-world consequences for consumers everywhere, not just the U.S.
Absolutely. So wrapping this all up, when you look at everything we've touched on today, the Maryland espionage case linked to North Korea via gaming, the NYPD officer working for China, the Harvard XBCC sanctions issue, China possibly aiding Houthi attacks, Taiwan security worries, Vietnam shifting alliances, the trade tariff dodging, and now this potential dropping of safety standards.
Yeah, it's a lot, but it all connects, doesn't it?
It really does. It paints this picture of global tensions just manifesting in so many different, sometimes unexpected ways. Cyber, finance, academia, military, trade, it's all interconnected.
Makes you wonder what the next unexpected connection or consequence will be, doesn't it? What underlying currents are driving all these seemingly separate events, and where is it all ultimately heading?
Exactly. Something for all of us to keep thinking about, definitely.